Welcome back to another podcast. In this moment, Apple finally is starting to collapse under the weight of its AI failures. Elon Musk has just declared war on Apple with an antitrust lawsuit claiming they're rigging the entire App Store in favor of OpenAI. Meanwhile, Wall Street's most respected Apple analyst Dan Ives is warning that Tim Cook is about to face his own quote-unquote Blackberry moment where Apple becomes the next tech giant to get completely left behind.
So if you think about it, when was the last time that you saw Apple actually innovate in anything, let alone AI? So while Google launches Gemini, Microsoft partners with OpenAI and then scales Azure, and even Elon's own Grok is outperforming GPT-5 models, Apple is sitting on the park bench, drinking lemonade and watching the world pass by.
Is Apple's $600 billion manufacturing promise to the United States just a desperate distraction from their AI failures? Or can they still turn around the ship before it's too late? Is Tim Cook the right guy for the job? Or is it time for him to walk out those doors?
So we're going to talk about this today and dive in. I'm Startup Hack. We love to talk about software development as well as building custom software for companies. And this is Meet McKay, who loves to talk about finance and everything under the sun about business and finance and lots of else.
Totally. Yes. Thank you so much for having me back, Startup Hack. Yes, this is my father. I am his son. And we love to have these business, tech, finance conversations. These are conversations that we would have around the kitchen table. And we decided, hey, let's wake up a little bit earlier one of these days and record these and see what happens. And with the feedback we've gotten has been amazing. And we just do this because we love it, not because we have too much else to worry about. But we're both busy guys, but we both really enjoy talking about how tech is going to revolutionize business. Is AI really going to take your job? What's next with these companies? And we talk about what is really behind the hood of most of these companies. Is it real AI or is it vaporware? So in this podcast, we're going to dive into a lot of what is Apple's strategy with AI, because you're starting to see, is Apple going to dive in 2 feet deep? Are they going to put their toe in the water and get out? Is this the demise of Apple? So let's jump into it. Startup Hack, what do you got?
So the AI revolution is absolutely steamrolling Silicon Valley right now. And Apple, who was once the company that really defined the entire industry, is right now getting absolutely crushed. This week brought us the perfect storm. Musk is declaring lethal nuclear war. I can't say that early this morning, against Apple. And a brutal analyst warning about their AI strategy and saying that this is their Blackberry moment. And I love this opportunity because McKay actually, for one of my birthdays, bought me an old Breakout. It's one of those like tech breakouts. I should go grab it, but it's at one of those tech breakouts of a Blackberry itself. And if you think about it, I carried a Blackberry for a long time, and it's literally the iconic thing now of somebody who had the industry, somebody who literally had the corner on the market and lost. And so is Apple facing its Blackberry moment right now where it better innovate or it's going to die? And a lot of people are predicting that this is their panic moment. So we're going to break down whether Apple's in its darkest hour or whether it has the opportunity right now to just be the latecomer from the pack. Maybe they've been winding them behind everybody and they're ready to surge forward. Let's dive into it.
Totally. Sorry about that.
No, you're good.
My screen a little early here.
Let's jump into that.
Okay, sweet. So let's jump into it. So unless I missed it, around yesterday afternoon, yesterday evening, Elon Musk dropped a bombshell that xAI is going to sue Apple. Let me go ahead and get my screen up here. Elon Musk is going to sue Apple over antitrust violations, favoring OpenAI. Apple's App Store unfairly favors OpenAI, making it "quote unquote" impossible for AI apps to reach number one. Startup Hack, let's unpack this. What if you're Apple? Is this totally in your domain? Does Elon Musk have a point? What's your take?
So it's interesting. I hadn't really thought about OpenAI and Apple with some kind of a handshake partnership here, because there isn't at least one that I know of a financial reason for this. But essentially, Musk is claiming that OpenAI has gained its dominance and its crazy crazy rise in users, because they're saying they have over 700 million users now. And Musk is basically blaming this on Apple's the App Store here, right? And it's interesting because we know Microsoft, has played favorites with OpenAI for years, right? This is not anything new, but for Elon Musk to point this out for Apple to be doing that too is kind of interesting.
Yeah, what's interesting is if you actually, it happened a few times while we were driving, we'd like ask Siri a question. Um, and if it wasn't one of Siri's like pre-designed Q&As, then it said, do you want me to ask, um, do you want me to ask, I'm totally blinking. Do you want me to ask ChatGPT? And so it will then, I don't know what form of ChatGPT it's using, but then it uses ChatGPT to try to attempt to answer the question. So
Hmm.
Apple and OpenAI do have some sort of agreement. And Elon Musk was pretty upset when this first happened because he said, if this goes through, then I won't be an iPhone user anymore because ChatGPT will steal all your data. Like Apple's handing all your data over to OpenAI. And as somebody that's kind of like a staunch critic of Apple, we can say, Startup Pack, you've
Yep.
defended Apple and their data. Like you're like, one of the things Apple does do well is data privacy and security, kind of because they have to. Right? That's just kind of the responsibility comes from being one of the biggest tech companies in the world. What do you think about GPT and Apple in cahoots? Are they really sharing data, or do they have some separate agreement, do you think?
I wasn't actually even aware that Apple was doing that because, I'm an Android guy, as my followers know. I definitely am not a big fan of Apple personally, but you're right. They've always taken a really strong stand on their security policies. I think partly because they love to have, a lot of the corporate, like government, they've been allowed into those spaces for so long. So this is a really interesting move to see them doing that because, it's really interesting. But Musk specifically called out how ChatGPT appears in every list where Apple has editorial control, while his own Grok app ranked fifth overall, getting mysteriously excluded from Apple's must-have section. And so, that's the key things that he's filing here. Now, the thing that's kind of interesting about this, and I saw some people online calling Musk a sore loser, and because they're saying, wait, if you go on to X, you can't not hear about Grok. Like it's everywhere, and
Yeah,
you don't hear about OpenAI on X. So they're saying that this is fairly hypocritical of him. But the bigger thing to this is that Musk could actually just be doing something that's a funny and interesting strategy. As we know, Elon Musk is brilliant in his corporate level strategies. We saw this with the xAI takeover to kind of pay for Twitter. We've seen this over and over again with a lot of his company level strategies. But what he could be actually really doing is actually just opening the doors so that every single AI company can come out and file suit, right?
yeah,
Because if he leads the charge, suddenly Anthropic can jump in. Suddenly, all of these other companies can jump in and just start piling on Apple.
totally. So it does look like I have pull up on OpenAI's website how you can integrate Apple Intelligence to Siri. Um, And if you'd like to ask Siri a question, it just asks you to confirm. What I don't see here is I don't see any articles about a compromise of security, which is interesting. I see some Reddit posts. I don't really want to dive into those right now. I was kind of looking for more of a mainstream article, but I don't see anything regarding security. Is it because you have to opt in through your settings that's kind of what we're thinking is good enough security for data privacy?
I
Oh
guess
wait,
do do you,
there is an OpenAI article right here.
do
But
you
what are your
have
initial thoughts?
do you have ChatGPT installed on your phone? Because when you did, you may have actually accepted some of these terms.
Mhm. Got it. So you're just yes, but I wonder if you have to have ChatGPT installed for it to be able to search. That would be interesting.
Probably. Most likely you accepted something when you went to install it. So, and this kind of leads us into the whole point is that rather than actually innovate here, rather than Apple actually like opening up and doing their own AI thing, which is what everybody's doing right now, right? Even the smallest companies, heck, even the brands I'm working on right now are all trying to get something with AI into it. And yet we saw Apple Intelligence try to go AI. That was a massive failure. Siri is 10 years in the dark at this point. I think right before this started, you were trying to get Siri to turn off your alarms and it wouldn't even work right. And so I
Yeah.
think every Apple user out there is frustrated with Siri. And so Dan Ives, I think, is really really calling this out here. And he just delivered the most brutal assessment of Apple's AI strategy that I've ever seen from a major analyst. And he literally said, Apple is on a park bench drinking lemonade, watching this technology innovation change the world. And he said that this is going to be their Blackberry moment. And again, I'm going to go grab my Blackberry thing really fast.
Okay, cool. Let's see it. While he's doing that, it really does speak to me. Okay, let's see it. Let's see if I can. There you go. So you can see the BlackBerry, it's dismantled, and I thought it was kinda cool, kind of like an omen to, like, never stop innovating. Um, and I knew that I remember when I was a kid, my dad brought home a BlackBerry, and that was just one of the earliest tech memories I have is of the BlackBerry. So, yeah, I can't remember how old
And,
I was when you brought that home, but, yeah, I thought it was
well,
really cool.
and I had that device for a long time and I used it and I actually figured out how to hack it and how to do things with it. But that's kind of the whole point at this point is that Apple has been sitting on this market share. They're on their throne. And the problem is they're on their throne thinking they can order everybody around, spend $1 billion building a new circular campus their campus.
Totally. What so if you're Apple right now, we saw Tim Cook circling the wagons a couple weeks ago saying that like Apple needs like this is theirs to win. Are they just slow movers? Are they big enough where they can move the slowest and still win? Or do you think that do you think they're actually going to the ship is starting to take on some water?
I think they're starting to take on water. I think I understand like even Amazon was a little slow to move. They tried some AI strategies and now they're going hard. And what they've done instead is they're now hosting literally every single model in AWS and just run into the bank on AI hosting. And so Apple's come up with that strategy where they've made some money, even though they haven't personally innovated a ton on their own AI models, right? And so they've found a way to profit from it. Apple has not. They've not figured this out yet. There's been a ton of rumors out there about first a Perplexity purchase, and then that went south. And I don't remember the reasons why, but now there's a whole bunch of reports swirling that Apple is seriously considering buying Mistral AI. Now, I've used a lot of Mistral's open source models because they've had a lot of models. And I think Apple would be really smart to do this. I think it would give funding to Mistral that would allow them to be able to help Apple surge forward. I think this would be the only thing that's a little interesting about this is Mistral is a French company where Apple's always been pure US. This move to purchase a French company could get kind of complicated and it could take a while. I know international purchases like these can take a little bit.
So explain who is Mistral and why do you think this is a good acquisition?
Mistral's been building open source models for a long time, and they were one of the first really good open source models that came out. They also have kind of a trail off of one called Mixtral, which is Mix instead of MIS, Mistral. And so they have a series of open source models, which they've worked to build, and they've built their own AI company where they do, a lot of private contracts for other companies to help to fund it. But right now, the reported number is that it would cost Apple $6 billion. But if you look at compared to like what Meta spending, that's pocket change. That's nothing. I mean, Zuck was proposing a $1 billion acquisition for one person. So to buy that whole company with its client base, with all of its portfolio, with its talent for $6 billion, I think would be a steal. I think they should be looking at 10 billion if they have to get back in the race.
But buying a company doesn't like you can spend 6 billion, but that still doesn't make you a really good AI competitor. How does Apple integrate this into their ecosystem? How does Apple integrate Mistral to start compete with the likes of xAI, OpenAI, and Meta?
Well, part of the reasons I think this would be a very particularly good strategy. One, Mistral's for sale. Like they've kind of opened that door a while ago that they're willing to do it. But the other thing about it is that Mistral is actually really good at embedded UIs. Embedded models. Their smaller LLMs are some of their strengths. That's what Apple tried to do with Apple Intelligence and failed. Because of this privacy reason, Apple wants to try to run the LLMs on their devices. Apple's chips are really good at running AI. It's been a known thing. Their devices are a little underpowered on RAM because they've always done the walled garden, and so they've been able to optimize their software to run really well on their hardware. But I think this pair within 6 months could have something actually running AI on your phone. I think they really could make something work there. And with new modern protocols and other things, I think this would actually be a Microsoft, Microsoft plus OpenAI and how that partnership has worked for both really well. I think this could be that kind of a moment. So I'm curious why they're dragging their feet so long on this because this rumor has been out for over a month.
And what are your concerns when it comes to data privacy and running small models on your phone? Do you think would it be similar to like a llama style model, like a Meta? And then does that bring in heightened security concerns? What's your take?
No, it's actually a better for data privacy because your data never leaves the phone, right? Right now, if you know, one of my biggest gripes to OpenAI is everything goes through their cloud. And if you don't think OpenAI is capturing all your data, think again. Every single thing that you pump through OpenAI, and a recent report said that 70% of corporations know that their customer data is being pumped into OpenAI by the users in their corporation. It's a huge concern. It's going to come back to bite a lot of people. People don't realize how open this actually is to do that kind of thing. And I think Apple does know that. And I think they've taken the security concerns real. And that's why they've been slow moving. But there's only so long you can sit on your haunches. You're going to have to solve that. And the best way to solve that is to keep it on the device.
Sam Altman himself said that, hey, like if we get subpoenaed and we need to bring forth your ChatGPT history, we have to. Like, and
Mhm.
in saying that, not only one did he say the quiet part out loud, but two, he just confirmed that yes, like we have everything that you've ever told ChatGPT.
No,
So
in fact, he warns people.
yeah,
Sam directly warns people to stop saying all their personal, their personal medical histories and all that. He's actually begging people not to do it because he knows they're going to be a target.
yeah, it's pretty freaky when you have the CEO of a company saying that, but he just he keeps taking data. Um, So, yeah, I
Well,
think
they
that's
have no other
interesting.
model. They have no
Huh?
OpenAI has no other model. OpenAI
Yeah.
has no other model. They're like that has been their model from day one. And they say that they're open, but the fact is they've been pretty open about the fact that they're just stealing your data.
Mhm. So, what do you think about this, unless you have more to say on the Mistral acquisition or potential acquisition, what do you think about Apple's $600 billion manufacturing play?
It's interesting. So Apple made a very similar move, a huge announcement, lots of noise a few years back. Some things came from it, some didn't, right? And so this isn't the first time Tim Cook's come with the gold plaque to the White House and tried to schmooze his way in. I don't. I think this actually is indicative of the very core problem. This is the BlackBerry moment. And they think doing those kind of things will keep the company around by, buddying up to the White House. And I'm not opposed to that. Don't get me wrong. I love that to see Apple move a lot of that back to the US shore. I'm a patriot at heart, and I love to see this. But at the same time, like they've got to get truly innovative. That's not innovation. Apple's got to get back to their core. I think Steve Jobs would be running through departments, slashing people, screaming at people, saying, "Get to work. What the heck is going on?" Probably a lot meaner things than that, actually. But I don't know if Tim's just too nice of a guy. I don't know if he hasn't appointed the right lieutenants to be the Steve Jobs, but like the Steve Jobs momentum is gone.
Yeah, I think it's a case of too big itis. I think that they are too big to move that quickly because every decision probably has to run up 5 chains of supervisors to be approved, and they're just too big to innovate. I mean, when you have billions of phones in people's hands, you don't just push updates overnight to do things. But that's still they still it doesn't really excuse the lack of urgency. Like they're not even pumping the stock, or like they're not even like selling the idea that they have something big coming. Like it is crickets. Like the most we get is a leaked behind closed doors meeting of Tim Cook saying, "Come on, guys, we have to get in the fight." But that just almost further confirms the issue that they haven't even gotten in the ring yet. So I'm really curious to see what it sounds like. They're more focused on a foldable phone right now than they are about AI, which is I think is it could be a BlackBerry moment.
Which is an interesting thing because if you think about, so I just was when I was actually doing research for this, I had a couple of leaks that came up for the next iPhone release. And you want to talk about ho hum, right? Like, I mean, and granted, I've been one who said for a decade that Android's had everything in front of iPhone. And sure enough, if foldable phone is going to be their big thing, like how long has Android been doing foldable phones? I mean,
Yeah.
at
No,
least
you're
five
right.
years.
Yeah, the last upgrade. So I used to be an Android guy, not by choice, but under my parents' unrighteous domain. And then once I left the house, I ended up getting an iPhone mainly for work reasons. And I'm just kind of once you get in the Apple ecosystem, that's just how they get you. Um, but the last iPhone upgrade was, and I was like, I'm not gonna upgrade. I'm not gonna upgrade. But the only one that got me was the USB-C. That was what I wanted. I wanted to finally get away from the Lightning. the lightning cable and I wanted USB-C, and I don't think I will upgrade for a very long time. My phone is the battery is the only thing, but other than that, like I'm always by power source. So that
Yep, and you can always
Apple's
go replace
failure
the
to innovate,
battery.
huh?
And you can always go replace the battery. And people are starting to do that. And that's
Yeah.
the point. And that should be a huge call out to Apple that they need to do something. Now, to be fair, they did try to do something. Their biggest innovation that they launched so far. So we know they worked on cars for a long time and they scrapped that, right? They spent a lot of money on that. I think it was estimated they spent, I don't remember the numbers, but it was a big number. And then they tried to do you bought them even,
The
right? The
Vision Pro.
goggles. Vision Pro, right? So tell me about your experience with the Vision Pro.
So it was a really cool paperweight, but no. The first week or so, they're fun. And I they're cool for travel, like on planes, but one, people never got over the stigma of wearing something huge on your face. It's a really cool party trick. Everybody loves to try them on. Everybody thinks it's really cool, but they're not the ones that paid 5 grand for them. It's the price of a like a cheap car. Um, and yeah, it was. I thought the tech was cool. I thought the tech was cool. I thought it was innovative, but the practicality was not there. They just weren't practical. It was nice having the Apple ecosystem. The biggest feature that I used was I would share my laptop screen up. So I'd like have my laptop here, and then I would have more monitors here. And then about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I sold them for 2 grand. So they didn't hold their value very well, but people are still wanting them because the guy's like, oh, dude, I'm so excited. Like, I love these things. And hey, if you got them for 2 grand and you're happy with them, then you got a deal. But the practicality wasn't quite there for me. They were nice for travel, but that was about it.
Yeah, and so I mean that was the last thing they tried to innovate and it flopped. And so I think Apple's trying to figure out what the next big thing is, and they have a lot of concerns around AI, and so I get it. And they already even have some scars with Apple Intelligence, right? So they're going to have to figure that out. But despite Apple's Q3 revenue growth, 10% overall, China growth was only 4%, and this is going to be a problem for Apple, right? Chinese consumers are increasingly choosing local Android alternatives with better AI features over iPhone that feel now, like you said, outdated, right?
Yeah.
And so Apple's service revenue in China faces increasing pressure from local alternatives that better understand Chinese user preferences. So if Apple can't solve their AI problem, they become a risk of being very irrelevant in China, which is a very expensive mistake for them.
Yeah, that's a good point. I wonder how much of Apple's decision not to jump into AI is worried about like the reverse TikTok effect, how the United States is afraid that by US users having TikTok, we're giving China all of our US data. I wonder if Apple's worried that China behind closed doors is like, don't you dare put a model on our phones because now you guys are gonna be stealing our data, and we don't want you guys to have our data of our users. What's your thoughts on that? Do you think that's a concern at all from
Well,
China's point of view?
a local model wouldn't do that because it won't be sending across the wire. And so that's the advantage to that strategy. And it's the other reason why I think Mistral would actually be a really smart move for them for China. So they could come up with an answer to the Chinese government, be like, no, look, it's never leaving the device. It all stays in the device. You have to opt in for it to leave. And Apple's already come up with a solution for that where they basically have agreed and shook hands with the devil and said, no, we'll stream all of that data in China to the central government to be able to filter. So the Chinese phones come with a VPN that actually already go. So a Chinese model of phone can't be erased. And in China, it has to go through their VPNs.
Got it. So, from a consumer perspective, as somebody that uses an Apple product daily, and I didn't type into GPT yesterday, but I actually talked to it, which was funny. Now that I think about it, that was like my only use of AI yesterday. For whatever reason, I accidentally had to buy a 1 month subscription to GPT-5. So I'm just testing it out. And I do encourage people, if you are in the realm of AIs, to keep poking and prodding at using other AI models to see if they're keeping up. I have a couple of questions for you regarding that. One of them, why the consumer wants a chat GPT voice that is really good at pinging back and forth, that is like a friend in your pocket. That's what they want Siri to be. Why can't Siri just be that?
So Grok's actually winning on that. When it actually comes to responsiveness of the voice, Grok's actually has won on that. And that was one of the things they really went at hard. And Musk talked about it in the xAI launch of Grok, where he talked about, the ability to respond back and forth quickly. It actually just recently updated to my car. I just recently got Grok in my car, and it's been fun because even in my car, it's actually pretty good. You can drive down the road and sit and talk to it. And while it's sitting there blathering, which we all know it can do, sometimes it can kind of carry on, you can actually interrupt it. Very few of the other AI models are allowing you to do that. So it actually does pretty well at that. And that's one of the Grok's claim to fames. But that's a classic example.
Link to your Grok X profile. So like it remembers you can have a conversation with it in your car and it will carry over to your computer, your profile.
Yep. So I frequently tell it, hey, go do this research for me. And I go back and review it on my computer.
Cool. Yeah, that's actually a huge hack. And I wish that Siri would be able to do that. And I think that Apple
do the research for you in the background.
Because if you think about it, it's a huge recurring revenue miss because I didn't even think about this. It's such a big boat to miss because they could tie it into I'm not saying they have Apple Fitness, they have Apple TV. They could just bundle it into that. It's like, hey, we're going to increase the price $5 a month.
Or they could not and sell whatever they sell because Apple sells anything to their Apple fan club. If they say they're going to sell,
they're so good at saying,
color.
hey, we're gonna bundle up a subscription for you, and it's almost too dumb not to do. Apple's really good at that. It's like, oh, $3 a month for Apple Music, why not? It's like, oh, and it includes Apple TV, great. But Apple has a law of large numbers really working in their favor. That's also probably their Achilles heel. But the user wants Siri to be like Grok. That's what they want. And why Apple is missing this boat so bad, it is terrible. The fact that Siri is already a household name is such a huge advantage because if they just made Siri good, it would be over. Apple would have won already because people are having to learn what Grok is. This is such a big boat to miss because ChatGPT was market first mover, and everybody's like, "Oh, Apple ChatGPT was first." They're wrong. Siri was first. People know Siri more than they know what ChatGPT is. Grandma knows Siri, but grandma may not know ChatGPT yet. Some grandmas are starting to know, but everybody knows what Siri is and who it is. And if they finally made Siri good, I think it would make Apple the most valuable company by a large magnitude.
I agree. And if you want another example of one that everybody knew was Alexa. Where's Alexa? Right?
They wound it down.
What's that?
They wound Alexa down. They shut it down.
I know. And I think that was another huge miss, right? But so Apple's Siri is going to become that pretty quickly if they don't do something right. Because the Perplexity deal died because there was something in the M&A structure with Perplexity that scared off Apple. And they were a little tight-lipped about why it was, but they just said, look, it was outside, no one wanted to do it. Even though for everybody else outside the company, Perplexity was trying to get $30 billion for an acquisition. And to everybody else, it was a no-brainer. And so that's why I think Mistral, if their price tag is anything under 10 billion, Apple should absolutely swoop in and do this. I think they should pay it if it's over 10 billion to exactly what you're saying. They are going to miss the boat. And the opportunity to buy something that they could work to integrate in months versus trying to build from the ground in years, just saying that they have the data. Now, that's the thing, is they do have the data. There's still enough people talking to Siri. They should have enough data to do it. But why they haven't been able to figure it out is kind of beyond me.
And heck, I don't know why Apple's not playing this this AI poaching game. They have enough money to poach these ridiculous engineers, and I'm not an engineer, so I don't know the stigma of it. But to me, if you were to get a massive job working for Apple with beautiful stock comp instead of a small little AI company, that's really enticing to me. So I feel like they could win a lot of these poaching wars. I mean, you do have people that want to go grind in these startups, but you also have these people that are diehard Apple, and they would work for Apple for less pay just because of the badge. It would be cool. If Elon wants to compete with OpenAI, he should be best friends with Tim Cook and be like, hey, let us know what you need. We will make Siri great again. But ironically,
well, yeah. And this wouldn't be the first time that a lawsuit opened up a conversation that maybe he just felt Tim Cook wasn't willing to have. And, generally speaking, I don't think a lot of people, regardless of how you feel about Elon Musk, really want to go head to head with Elon Musk in a legal battle. Because if you know somebody who's willing to leave all on the court to go after you, I think Elon's definitely known to leave everything on the court to go after you.
You bring up a good point because when Elon first bought X, there was a rumor that Apple was going to take Twitter, formerly known as Twitter, off of the App Store. And there was this vicious rumor that grew into an actual meeting between Tim Cook and Elon went to Apple's headquarters and met with Tim Cook. So that rumor got those two in the room, and then Apple led the charge in leading in advertising again on X. Apple, because all the advertisers left X in a boycott, and Apple and Elon met. Tim Cook and Elon met, and Apple resumed advertising on X, which props to Apple for kind of being the first one, the first staying with Elon. And I think that was a show of good faith. I think it's a show that if you get two humans in a room, we're actually a lot more like humans are a lot more reasonable than texting and typing than people give it credit for. And I think if Tim Cook and Elon got in a room regarding AI, I think Elon's like, hey, I have the brain, you have the hardware, like let's figure something out.
And I think if you think about this, you and I talked about it, right? The multimodal capabilities. Let's talk about what multimodal means, right? So multimodal means that I can open up like a chat prompt with an AI unit, give it something, go off, start another, modal, right? Another conversation, and have the AI running in the background doing all of this research for me. So it allows me to open up multiple threads of thought with AI. If you take the multimodal capability, which Mistral already has out of the box, plug it into the Apple ecosystem, you'd be running into that really fast where you could be, I just think this would be a huge innovation point. So I'm not totally sure why what it is that's scaring Apple away from that. Why it is that, what happened in that closed door meeting where a must win became we're not going to announce anything. So it's curious because Apple's never been able to innovate quietly over the last 10 years. Pretty much everything they've been working on, from cars to Vision Pro to everything, was leaked before it came out. So it kind of is a little weird that there's a bunch of vague promises right now about Apple Intelligence and no concrete roadmap.
Do you think part of the problem, this is a little bit kind of leading into your next point, do you think part of the problem is every time Apple gets something going, the key engineer gets poached?
It's possible. There has been massive talent wars, but at the same time, like you said, Apple should be able to throw enough of whatever it needs, whether it's stock, money, or incentive, or name, or whatever, to be able to keep somebody around.
Do you think it also comes from Tim not being a technical CEO?
I don't know. It's a good question because, Steve was definitely a technical CEO, right? Like he definitely got down on the weeds, and like we know that he would meet with John Ives and a lot of these other guys weekly, right? To actually pick at and touch and do things, right? I don't think we see Tim doing that as much. And they say that it's a different CEO for a different phase, but I think Tim's got to rip the covers back and at least get one of his lieutenants then to go Steve Jobs on everybody, right? Like I think they just need that. And I'm not totally sure why, if it's that the company's gotten too woke, so they're soft, if it's because they are just a little too, just soft overall, to HR PC, that they can't go in and yell at somebody. I'm not really sure. I don't really know a lot about the inside the closed doors to Apple because I've always tried to stay away from Apple.
Do you think they're afraid of their AI doing what happened to Grok a few weeks ago, where all of a sudden just goes on this Hitler tirade? And do you think Apple's afraid of the crisis that could come from it?
In the early days, that was definitely their reason. They were very public about the fact that they said, and part of their reason for pulling Apple AI or Apple Intelligence came with actually apologies, saying, we're sorry, we did release it too early. And so I think they know they can't really do that twice, right? So I think part of it comes from the Apple Intelligence failure the first time, where they're like, we have to get this right. Now, the thing about it is, going into AI, you have to know that that it's going to hallucinate, that it's going to do weird stuff. And, X pivoted on that, xAI pivoted on that just fine. It was like, yep, Grok went crazy, here's why, and then went about their business, right? And some people ran away from it, but they didn't lose that much market. I don't think they actually lost any market share over it. I mean, they get poked fun at for it. Apple's going to have to grow a thicker skin for that if they want to get into this game. And that's going to be a huge part of it, because if they don't, like, you just have to know that. So ChatGPT 5 just released, right? And they're like, oh, our hallucination's so much better, right? So their hallucination rates went from 12% to 9.6%. So it went down like around 2%, meaning 1 out of every 10 things you ask ChatGPT are going to have falsehoods in them. And that's from ChatGPT's, like from OpenAI's paper. I'm not making those numbers up. Like they release that as their known accepted hallucination rates.
Yeah, that's crazy. What has been your, I don't know if you've talked to your audience much about this, so if you want to save it, that's fine. But what has been your overall impression with Grok 4 versus OpenAI GPT-5?
So I use Grok for a lot of different things. I mostly find that I use Claude. Claude seems to be my big claim to fame, and I think those who follow me know that Claude I think is the closest. I think they have the lowest hallucination rates. I think they're doing the most to try to battle hallucination to that point where they're where they are trying to battle that the lowest, right, and keep those numbers down. That's part of the reason I like Claude is I feel like I get the least amount of hallucinations when I use it. Grok is really good. I think it does best at research. Part of the reason I like Grok is because it does go out and search X. Right now, it's the only one that can search X. So if I'm going to give it a series of X posts, it can follow them. And I think that's a huge strategic advantage for Musk because even Sam Altman himself posts all of his puts all of his announcements out on X, right? Like it's where people put their announcements. And so to not have the connectivity to X is actually a huge drawback for everybody.
Funny enough, everybody else can make the same, you brought it up earlier, can make the same accusation against Elon. That's like, hey, Elon, are you letting anybody else crawl over X for their AI models? Because you can't get after Apple for promoting GPT if you're not letting anybody else have access to X. I don't know what the case is behind that. I don't think anybody else has access to X, but
nope. Just Elon's kept it to Grok. He wants to keep that as one of the big advantages for Grok.
And it makes sense. It's a war. It's an AI tech war. Like this is what it is.
And that's it. And that's what the thing is I think Tim Cook isn't ruthless enough. I think that's the biggest difference. He's not playing in war anymore. Steve Jobs was not worried about going to war. How many times did he use those terms against Android? He has said gone nuclear, declare war. Like there's quotes of Steve saying, I am going to bury Android, right? Like he was never soft about it. You don't really hear any of that kind of words from Tim, right? Yeah. And I think he needs to battle up a little bit. And I'm not saying he's the wrong guy for the job. Either that or else he needs to hire an AI chief that is going to be the Steve Jobs, right? And if I were Tim, that's probably what I would do is hire that guy, label him this AI chief for the company and say, go after it.
Totally.
And then empower him to do it.
I think this has been a fascinating conversation about Apple from everything saying they're too big to move quickly. Are they afraid of data leaks? Are they afraid of security? But I think we've addressed those. Is Tim Cook the right guy? I don't know. I don't know.
Well, here's one other company to compare against. If you want to look where Apple is right now, we talked about Blackberry. That's a very apt comparison, but there's another one. Go look at IBM, right? IBM had the corner of the market, and you're too young to remember this. I'm almost even too young to remember this because this was in the early 80s. IBM had the corner of the market. They owned PCs. Every desk that was going out was shipped as an IBM compatible. It's actually how they called them. And they lost the innovative edge, and they became just this big company behemoth because they couldn't innovate faster. So is this a BlackBerry moment where we see the beginning of the demise because as handheld, or is this IBM because IBM got too big and couldn't innovate fast enough? So if you actually want another comparison, go compare Apple to IBM.
That is interesting. I wonder if it's a speed thing, because you use the word fast, like they didn't innovate fast enough. And I don't think the market punishes necessarily for moving carefully and strategically. I think the market punishes ignorance, right? Were they too ignorant to innovate? Which is what I'm a little worried about that's happening to Apple is they're becoming a little too ignorant to what the consumer's wanting.
I agree. And I think that's it. And Steve Jobs always used to say, well, if I'd asked everybody what they wanted, they would have asked for a faster horse, right? Talking about like the Model T analogy, right? And that's when he came out with the iPad. And for a long time, everybody heralded the iPad and be like, we don't just want bigger phones. And yet iPads are a staple now, right? And so I think there needs to be some of that. And Tim was trying to do that with the Vision Pro, but he should have watched Zuckerberg fail in his goggle wearing failures and known that wasn't going to happen.
I don't. This may sound kind of funny, but I don't know if Tim Cook necessarily has that AI dog in him, because you have even Zuck, even you may disagree with how Zuck does things. He's in the fight, right? He's in the fight. He's trying. He's poaching. He's throwing money. He's trying everything. Elon's in the fight. Jensen Wang. He he's the referee in the fight match, holding up the ring card and saying, hey, no, go back to your corners, right? He's you just have all of these CEOs in the fight, and Tim Cook is kind of outside the boxing ring right now, taking pictures, saying, yeah, once I get in shape, I think I'll get back into the fight. And I don't know if that's what's going to be good for Apple long term.
Yeah, even Microsoft, who hasn't necessarily invested directly in AI themselves, they have some interesting strategies. Their partnership with OpenAI, their purchase of GitHub, right, which then turned into really the source to how like the GitHub Copilot became the coding king, or what they're calling the coding king, just simply because they own the code, right? So they can actually even poach against private repos, right? So they can do all of this kind of stuff. And so even Microsoft is slowly, quietly playing that battle. And what is growing for them is their Azure bill, right? We saw that in their latest earnings. So everybody's playing something, and Apple's sitting here with literally nothing to show in this AI market.
Totally. Well, I've had a lot of fun. This has been a great conversation. Any final words? What if people want to learn more about Startup Hack? What is it? Where do they go?
Startuphack.com or startuphack.com/Spencer if you need help getting custom software for your organization. We specialize in connecting systems. So if you have disconnected systems in your company that are slowing you down, reach out to startuphack.com/Spencer.
And if somebody has like an idea, they're like, oh man, like I don't know how to code, but I've always had this amazing idea for an app or a website. Can they come to you and figure out something?
Yep, we have a lot of different options there. So reach out to startuphack.com.
Perfect. And if you like finance, if you like drama, if you like business drama, that's what I like to talk about is business drama. I don't like to talk about like drama, but just Robotaxi war, AI war. We do this podcast every Tuesday morning. I think we're on a 5-week streak now. I think this is episode 5. I hope I numbered it correctly. It's either episode 4 or 5. But we're on a streak. We really love doing this. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, consider subscribing to Startup Hack. Consider subscribing to me. Leave us a comment. We really get a lot of hype off of you guys' feedback. It makes us excited to wake up early on these days. But thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you next Tuesday.
Take it easy.